Hello kids, it's me again, back with another video. Long time no see, but life be lifin', I guess. Just a hair over 2 years ago, I made a video talking about the lessons I learned working in my first video production job. And I'm using that term very lightly because although my job title was videographer, I didn't do a whole lot of videography. Now that it's been 2 years since I've been at my new job, or I guess not that new anymore, I thought I'd give a little update on how things are going. I think now that I've been working at this job for 2 years, and really it does not even feel like 2 years, I can give a kind of accurate assessment of what it's like for those of you who are maybe considering it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. A little background about me: I actually have a film degree, not a marketing or communications or journalism degree. Currently, I work at a medium market TV news station as creative services producer, which is a lot of words that probably don't mean a lot, but allow me to break it down. TV news stations are broken down into viewing areas across the US. My viewing area is Jackson, Mississippi, which encompasses not just the city of Jackson, but all of central and southwest Mississippi. According to Wikipedia, we're currently number 99 out of 210 for market sizes, so we're just about smack dab in the middle for population size. I can't say which station I work at for privacy reasons, and also because there was a whole to-do about social media use recently. We had a whole department meeting and everything, but just know I work at the best one. And yeah, every station says they're the best, but we're actually the best. Creative services is just a really fancy phrase for marketing. Essentially, I make commercials, but specifically promoting the station. I do make paid commercials sometimes, but that's only if someone's out and a spot needs to be done. So, if you're watching my station and see a commercial advertising a specific newscast or weather or news story, chances are it was made by me, which is pretty cool. People actually watch the things I make now. It's really interesting because even though I know the things I make, like I have to watch them 11 times when I'm editing them, anytime I'm at a family member's house, because I don't have cable or even a TV in my house, the irony, and they're on our channel and one of my spots goes on, I get to point and go, oh look, I made that. And I know it's only been 2 years, but it never gets old. No joke, one time me and my team were out after hours at this restaurant and one of my spots came on the TV and we all cheered. Which sounds very, Tumblr, everybody clapped, but it was real and it was amazing. So, like I said before, I have a film degree, which I would consider overkill for something like local news commercial maker, but also not. I learned how to do basically everything in school: write, shoot, edit, and everything in between. So that meant I could essentially be a one-man band, and I often am when I make my commercials. I was so overprepared that I didn't even go through any formal training at work. My first spot was completed and on the air 4 days after I started. And it was edit only, but still, slay. But yes, if you are considering a career in creative services, depending on the size of your team, you will have to know how to do pretty much everything. Notice I didn't say be good at everything. Screenwriting and copywriting are two completely different disciplines, but I can use my storytelling skills to write 30 seconds of copy to get someone interested in a news story. I felt I was kind of deficient in my cinematography abilities when I started, but I feel like I've gotten better. I actually like shooting now. I hated it in school because I felt like I just couldn't catch on for some reason. You have lots of opportunities to learn as you go. And because I'm approaching what I do as a filmmaker and not just as a marketing person, I feel like the commercials I make have a certain je ne sais quoi to them that makes them stand out. And because I'm just a really sentimental person, for better or worse, I can also use that sentimentality to, and I hate to use this phrase, but it is what it is, sort of play on people's emotions when it comes to reasons to care about certain news stories or reasons to watch our station. I still like to think of what I do as filmmaking. It's just that now my films are a maximum of 30 seconds long. However, I do still have the opportunity to work on longer form content. I've helped produce half-hour or 1-hour specials for my station on a few occasions now. Because I make news-specific commercials, that means I am headquartered in the newsroom. To do what I do, you really need to be plugged into what's going on in the news world, so I kind of can't be anywhere else. On one hand, it kind of sucks being away from the rest of the department and not getting my own office like everyone else, but on the other hand, I love it. I'm a really nosy person, and being in the newsroom is basically one nonstop gossip sesh. The chisme is off the charts. I also attend the news meetings every day, so I know what stories are being reported on for the day, as well as stories that develop over time because, again, these are things I make promos for. Being in the newsroom really comes in handy when it comes to breaking news, which it is also my duty to promote. Weirdly, I thrive during breaking news. It's instant adrenaline for me. Arguably, a lot of TV news is being in competition with other stations in your market to say you got to break a story first. And I love being able to say that my promo for breaking news aired before any of the other stations. I never considered myself to be particularly competitive, but I guess I am now. I've also been able to tag along with reporters on stories so I can get behind the scenes footage as well, which I use all the time in my spots. This played out big time during a particularly well known political scandal in my city. If you know, you know. And I made what I consider to be my magnum opus that got submitted for an Emmy. Yes, an Emmy. More on that later. As far as my actual day-to-day goes, I actually spend most of the time editing. If I had to give a percentage breakdown, I'd say it's 80% editing, 15% shooting, and 5% writing. There's not that much travel involved. Usually I stay within the metro if I do leave the station to shoot something. I have had to make road trips a few times, but those are more rare. Honestly, most days I'm listening to music and doinking around in Premiere. It's actually pretty chill when there's no big stories or breaking news going on. Speaking of Premiere, at my station we work in the Adobe suite for marketing, but news uses this program called Edius, which I had never heard of before. It's honestly kind of antiquated, and I have asked, and the only reason they still use it is because it plays nice with all the interconnected systems news stations use to get stories on the air. Which is fair, but I've also had to doink around in Reporter's Edius projects, and compared to Premiere, it's like writing with clay tablets when you're used to typing on a mechanical keyboard. I don't like Edius at all. It's just really slow and unresponsive to edit with, and I think if our reporters got to work with Premiere, their heads would explode. But I digress. If you are looking to work in creative services, the programs I use the most are Premiere, After Effects, Audition, and of course Media Encoder. Occasionally I'll use Photoshop, but not super often. I would say Premiere is a must. Competency in After Effects is maybe not required starting out, but you will eventually want to know how to use it if you want to level up your spots, and knowing how to do a few things in Audition and Photoshop just makes my workflow easier. As for gear, thankfully, some people in my department are gearheads, so we've recently gotten some cool things, but for the most part, we shoot on Canon C100s, which are cinema cameras. Ours are pretty old, but those things are workhorses. Fun fact, the Canon C100 came out in 2012, and I don't know if ours are 13 years old, but they're good cameras, and aside from adding a compact mirrorless camera like an R6 or something to our arsenal, I'd use the C100 for another 13 years. At first, I was intimidated because, look at the thing. So many buttons and options, and they're also really freaking heavy. The body itself is a kilogram. Add a big chunky lens on there, and you've got a sore arm. What can I say? I'm used to my very petite Canon EOS M50 that I use for photography and to make these videos. However, I quickly found out that if you know how to use one camera, you can basically use any camera. We also have a decent assortment of lights and soft boxes and other trinkets and tchotchkes you might find in a camera case. I will say for the most part, I shoot everything with a standard Canon EF 50mm, which again is a workhorse. I kind of want one for myself. That combined with the C100 makes everything so delightfully cinematic. As for the cool thing we've recently gotten, the C100 is far too heavy to go on a standard gimbal, so we have the very fancy pants DJI Osmo Pocket 3, which apparently a lot of content creators use. Relatively speaking, it's cheap, and the footage looks great. We also have a drone, but only one of us is licensed to fly it, but we were offered drone training, and I started mine like a year and a half ago, but we all got really busy, so none of us finished. But the good thing is that if I do take the test and pass, the station will reimburse me the $200 it costs to take it. And yes, it costs $200 to take the test. It's really expensive. And then I'll be licensed to fly a drone commercially. But I gotta finish the training first. That pretty much covers my day-to-day making commercials at a news station. So, how does this job stack up to my old one? Well, the first big difference is that I'm actually doing work at my job now, which is a weird thing to say, but the amount of downtime I had at my last job was honestly astounding. I'm a decently fast editor, so when I would finish something and send it to my bosses for review, they would take, no joke, months to actually look at it. So I'd just be sitting there trying to occupy my time because aside from managing their socials, which isn't terribly time consuming, I'd have nothing to do. That was how I was able to write 2 screenplays and a bunch of YouTube video scripts and read and give coverage on a decent amount of scripts on Coverfly X. When I wasn't writing, I was going on Wikipedia rabbit holes. Sometimes it got to the point where several weeks would go by and I never even opened Premiere. It was kind of crazy. And to some, going to work every day and collecting a check for basically nothing probably sounds great, but that was not what I was looking for in my first full time job after college, after a period of 8 months of unemployment. Now, though, I actually work at my job. What a concept. Another big difference is that my first job was at a nonprofit, while now I work for a corporation. There are a lot of memes about nonprofit work. Just look at the nonprofit boss character by Nicole Olive.
Nicoley, it's okay I called you that. My heart is just so heavy right now with these fires. I just wanted to give you a call though, because I see you're working from home. And that's fine, right? I think I'm just wondering, kind of just to take a temperature check. That's not too insensitive. Are you planning on coming in later? Will you be in the office tomorrow? And either way, zero pressure from me, right? Do what is safest for you. I do want to let you know though that the office is super cozy right now. There's no electricity, but I've put up some candles. We have an air purifier. The air is feeling really safe. I think what I'll just offer you at this really challenging time is this idea about fires. They burn bright and they burn strong. And that should be how you feel about the mission.
I wasn't asked to come in during hurricanes or anything like that, but I do remember my second and last Christmas working there. We were given 2 weeks off, but we still had to work from home, despite the fact that, again, I had no work to do. And I distinctly remember my boss being a little over the top with the fact that, oh, most employers don't give their employees 2 weeks off, so you should be thankful for that. And like, I guess not. The news never sleeps, so there's often people still working on Thanksgiving and Christmas and all other holidays. Not me, because my job doesn't really require that. And in some hurricane-prone markets in Florida and Louisiana, they do make everyone stay at the station. But also, this past Christmas, I just took the week off. My boss didn't make me grovel at their feet for granting my time off or anything. I turned off my email notifications and had a pretty decent holiday, and I wasn't made to feel any type of way about it. In fact, my boss encourages us to take time off. The nonprofit that I worked at had maybe 6 full-time employees, including myself, and the office was kind of small. Now, my entire department is more than 6 people, and the building is bigger. Not a sprawling campus by any means, and maybe on the smaller side for news stations, but working with that few people and in such a small space day after day got kind of claustrophobic after a while.
I'm claustrophobic, Darren! Listen, they don't get it! I'm claustrophobic!
I like being able to walk around the building when Premiere starts pissing me off, because the only good thing about my last job is that I had a brand new, at the time, M1 iMac to edit on. Listen, I prefer Windows for pretty much everything, but for some reason, Macs are better to edit on. I don't know why Adobe programs tend to just not play nice on Windows, but again, I digress. So yes, I now have corporate overlords, but I would prefer the structure of that versus my last job. At least now we have an HR department. I will say, this industry has some not great corporate overlords, and I don't know if it's because I'm wearing rose-colored glasses, but my overlords don't seem that bad. In an industry where entire newsrooms are being replaced by AI, mine has, for now anyways, committed to keeping humans at the forefront. We're even expressly disallowed from using AI, and in a world where no-talent tech bro chuds who will never amount to anything in life aside from money-hungry, soulless freaks are convinced that AI can accurately portray the human condition, it feels good. But things can always change, so I have to be aware of that. I'm sure hundreds of people working for Tegna stations across the country thought they would still have a job in 2025. Anything could happen. All that said, just a few months after I started working at my first job, we got notification that one of our main funding sources decided to not renew our funding for some reason, which was framed to us as totally random and unexpected, and it very well could have been, but the older I get, the more I realize nothing happens for no reason. 1 or 2 people were pretty much in charge of grant applications, and let me tell you, they wrote for a lot of grants. I can imagine it's a lot to keep up with. Now, with the wackadoodie state of our country currently, federal funding freezes have put the nonprofits that rely on them in a very tough spot. I'm not sure how much of their funding came from federal sources, but I know some of it did, and there's a very real possibility that if I was still working there now, I would not have a job at the end of this year. And also, side note, this is completely off script, but something tells me that my boss would definitely have been one of the people to really embrace AI, and it probably would have just pissed me off to the point where I probably would have just quit, but that's neither here nor there. So it's not like nonprofits are any more stable than corporates or the other way around. I will say though, I probably wouldn't work for another nonprofit. I know not all of them are poorly run, but it just really put a bad taste in my mouth. I'm sure, however, some of you are wondering about the dollars and cents of it all. For full transparency, if you're looking to make the big bucks, TV news is very much not for you. In fact, hardly any creative fields are going to net you anything near, say, tech money. That's just the way things go, unfortunately. Despite that, I'm not destitute or anything. On my salary, which has gone from $38,000 to just over $40,000 in 2 years, I'm able to sustain myself, live on my own, and save money. $40,000 in some places is basically destitute, but keep in mind the area I live in has a median household income of $43,000, so I'm actually not doing too bad. Also, keep in mind that the salaries offered at news stations are mostly in line with the cost of living in the area. I would probably make a lot more doing this in, say, New York City, but there I would probably still have to have like 2 roommates. I'm also offered a 401k match by my employer and no-cost health insurance, but since I'm 25 and will be on my parents' very good insurance until September, I can't really say how good it is, but for an unmarried person with no children or chronic health problems, I think it's probably fine. I certainly shall see later this year. Also, one really interesting thing about working at a news station owned by a larger parent company is that there's a lot of moving around that happens. Not really with creative services, but definitely news. Our station is kind of used as a jumping off point for reporters and MMJs, that's multimedia journalists, to do their little 2-year or however long contracts and move on to a larger station. In fact, one of the things my boss told me was that I could find myself at a bigger station after 2 years. Though, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really planning on moving anytime soon. But hey, you never know where life takes you. I certainly didn't plan on working in TV news, though serendipitously, when I first graduated, my mom connected me with one of her friend's kids who worked in news previously, and she recommended I work in creative services even though I had no clue what that even was at the time. Something that I've realized is that this job could open a lot of doors for me. I've been exposed to just so much more than I was at my last job. I've gotten an award, which, okay, second place, but that's not nothing. And like I mentioned before, 2 of my spots and 1 spot that our department worked on collaboratively got submitted for an Emmy. This isn't a nomination, not yet, anyways, but even just being able to say I'm Emmy nominated, potentially the first person in my entire film department at my university to do so, would mean a whole lot. And listen, awards aren't everything, but an Emmy? I'd be a quarter of a way to an EGOT. And some ding-dongs might say that a regional Emmy isn't the same as an Emmy, but they are governed by sister organizations, and the gag is the statuettes are the same. Aside from awards though, like my boss said, I could see myself at a bigger station, perhaps even a national one. I've gotten comments from higher ups saying the spots I make look like bigger market spots, and that was just last year. And it sucks I can't show any because they really do eat down, so you'll just have to trust me on it. One of the biggest differences between my current job and my last one, and this is something that's more specific to my experience, not the TV news industry as a whole, so keep that in mind with what I'm about to say, is that I'm actually respected. I said in my video about working my first media job, and although I love to complain, I'm not complaining here. Instead of yammering about how little my employers valued me, I made the steps to find an employer that would value me. Whether or not they do remains to be seen, but the vibes were right, so we'll see. And I can safely say, 2 years later, I do feel valued. People take me seriously. They think I'm able to do the job I was hired to do. And I can't tell you how validating that is after experiencing the exact opposite for a year and a half. I remember one time I was discussing a project with someone in my department who had been in TV for very nearly as long as I've been alive, and they asked me for any tips and tricks I had for shooting. Genuinely. They wanted to know if I had something to teach them. In that moment, it hit me like, oh, these people actually value my input. They don't look down on me because I'm new and young. They actually think I have something to add to this team. Something else that I've learned the hard way, unfortunately, is that people don't leave jobs. They leave bosses. If my old boss was just a little bit more respectful to me, I probably would still be there. I probably would have wanted to tough it out. Something that I've learned about myself, which is more part of growing up than anything is that I kind of put up with a lot. At some point, though, someone being a so-and-so to you makes you not want to put up with things anymore. Now, it's like night and day. I've said to my boss's face that if they ever left, I would be polishing up my resume and figuring something out because I don't think I could work for anyone else. And that is a little hyperbolic, but not 100% untrue. When I first started working, I saw a lot of discourse saying essentially that if your boss says your company is a family, then you should run. I rejected those notions because, well, my old boss said we were a family all the time and things were okay, until they weren't, of course. Basically, that's code for I'm going to treat you any kind of way and you're just going to have to deal with it because you have no choice. Thankfully, I did have a choice. And by the way, if any of your actual family members make you feel that way, you also have a choice. There have been times even in my current job where I felt like I had no choice, but in the end I actually did, and I was assured of that. That instance was really a turning point for me in that yet again, I was reminded that me and my opinions and feelings were valued. And I know a lot of people view corporate work as dehumanizing, and it very well can be in some places. Make no mistake, I know my corporate overlords don't really care if I live or die because of the capitalism of it all, but I at least know that my boss cares. Having a boss that cares, not just because quotas need to be met, but because they value you as a human person, really makes a difference, and I hope everyone gets to experience that at least once. The concept of family was forced at my last job, but now I actually care about my team members as if we were family. I never actively disliked my old coworkers, but now I actually want to spend time with my team members outside of work. I look forward to it. It's truly a wonderful feeling. Maybe it's a ploy to get me to sacrifice my best years by manipulating me with warm fuzzies, or maybe I just now have a boss who knows how to run things. Much to think about. As for what's next for me, I've gone back and forth on it for a while, whether or not this would be something I do long term. Truthfully, I mainly took this job because I just had to be away from my old one, because I was going to crash out if my old boss told me I had to pick collard greens again, but it ended up working out for the best. I still want to be a screenwriter, and sadly, because I actually work at my job now instead of trying to look busy like at my last one, I've done a lot less screenwriting. Remember my last video all the way back in October where I was like, ooh, I'll write a screenplay in a month? Didn't happen. I'm just too busy these days. And some people will be like, real writers always make time, but not only have I been in a several month-long writer's block that may or may not be caused by the D word, my best writing hours are spent at work. There's no way I'm giving up on my desire to be a screenwriter, by the way, but as hard as it is to admit, it's just taking the back burner for now. And things could change. I could meet a producer tomorrow that wants to buy one of my screenplays. Unlikely, but something that I've learned working in a newsroom is that truth really is stranger than fiction sometimes. Who knows what will happen? I'm just kind of along for the ride. Something that my film professor told me when I was a senior, after being the only black girl in the entire department for a while, was that now that there were some freshmen who were black girls, they would be looking up to me. At the time, I sort of took offense to this because, number one, I felt like I didn't know what the heck I was doing at the time, and number two, why all of a sudden were these girls' hopes and dreams on my shoulders? It felt unfair, almost. Now, though, I understand. My station has an internship program, and in the time that I've been there have been many young black women looking to learn how to do what I do, including some from my film department. And it feels good that I can be a positive representation for them and show them, some of whom didn't even know this line of work was available to them, much like me when I graduated, that this is a career that is not only available to you, but one that can be fulfilling and worthwhile. I wish I could have talked to someone who looked like me doing what I wanted to do, or really anything film related when I was in school, because although I was going to try to work in this industry by hook or by crook, it would have been nice to know that, yes, this is possible. In conclusion, would I recommend TV news marketing to burgeoning young film students? Honestly, yes. Whether you do it long term is definitely up to you, but as an early life job, it ain't bad. And keep in mind, I am really only talking about creative services. News is a whole different, often unforgiving beast, and I'm convinced only the most insane of our society can survive and thrive in a commissions only sales department. But the only thing I'll say is that our interns prefer marketing the most for a reason. That'll be it for me now. It's been a very long time since I've done an outro, and because of that, so much has changed. I don't use Twitter anymore. I haven't written a Medium article in so very long. My podcast is still active. You can watch it, but I guess, I don't know. I mean, I made a Blue Sky. I don't know if I'm going to be using it all that much, but it's there. It's available. It exists. Follow me on Blue Sky. I don't write on Medium anymore really all that much, but I have another website that I write on pretty regularly enough. Read my music articles on jacksonunderground.com. I bought a domain and everything. And listen to my podcast, because my podcast is still active. Every other week I make an episode. That's gonna be it for me. Also, can I say something? I want to say something before I go. I want to insert something. So, like I said in this video, I like that I have been positive representation for young Black women in this field that have come through my station's internship program. And, you know, I have wanted to go back to my university because we have this class called Film Careers where, you know, you have to think critically about what you're going to do long term. And when I took that class, which was during COVID, so already a very tough time, but when I took that class, I think we had not an alumni because there weren't that many alumni because the program was still very new, but we had, I guess, a former, I don't know, mentee, I guess, is the only way I can describe it, of my film professor come and talk to us via Zoom, of course, about, you know, what they do with their career. And I have wanted to go back to my university to be that person, you know, say like, hey, I'm an alumni, this is what I'm doing with my career, this is what you can do with your career, potentially, if that's something you want. And I've reached out to my professor on 2 occasions now, and I genuinely do not know why, but my professor is just like not returning my emails, so I don't know what to do with that information, but I did want to include that here because, I don't know, it feels weird. I'm not gonna lie, but also at the same time, my professor did engage in a not insignificant amount of favoritism, and I was not a favorite. So, you know, do with that what you will. Anyway, I have to go. I don't have a better outro. I really don't. I haven't done this in a while, and the reason I haven't done this in a while is because I've been working this great, amazing job, so that's why I've been absent. Anyways, goodbye.